Hello, I am Jacob. I'm the host of the show. Thank you for watching, commenting, and subscribing, and just being a part of what we do here. Now, the NFL season is about 140 plus days away, but we still got a lot of news to get into, including some college news that we will talk about in a future video. But to begin, Carson Wentz was on the Colin Cowherd podcast, in which he responded to some critiques that Jim Irsay, the Colts owner, said about him, saying that Wentz replied and saying they were out of left field. Not really. You weren't a great quarterback in your final season with the Eagles. And then besides, there was a lot of games where the last two games you had to win, you only needed one to get to the playoffs, and you couldn't do that. And one of those games was against Jacksonville, which was the worst team in football. So it's not out of left field. It's not out of right field, however the saying wants to go. Jim Irsay, I'm not saying they should have went the way they did, because reportedly they did not talk to each other after the season ended. But I think it was a smart move to move on from Carson Wentz. You weren't going to get anywhere because you had to run the ball all the time, because there was a couple plays Wentz looked good, but there was a lot of plays he didn't look good. And I think the Colts made the safe decision, but the right decision, to move on from Carson Wentz. Also, the questions were in line the fact to say, that was a little harsh, don't you think? Like, we're not trying to be your best friend. You're trying to get the answer out. That's what your job is. Not, well, that was a little harsh. I mean, you've been reporting a long time, Colin. You know this. This is not that difficult. It really isn't. You get your question out. You don't go and say, well, that was a little harsh, don't you think? Come on. You know better than that. Deshaun Watson met with some NFL officials on Thursday, and who knows exactly what comes out of this for Deshaun Watson in terms of suspension and in terms of fines or anything like that, because he was not indicted. He had two times he could have been indicted. He wasn't. But there's still civil cases over his head. There's still court cases over his head at the moment. What does the NFL do? Well, my guess is we'll know in a couple of days, or maybe even a couple of weeks, of what the NFL chooses to do. Jesse Bates, the safety for the Cincinnati Bengals, has no intention to sign the franchise tag the Bengals gave him. Now, the Bengals did draft a safety this year, so maybe this is their way of saying, okay, then we're getting rid of you. We'll release you, we'll trade you, but we're getting rid of you. They drafted Daxton Hill for that reason. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But he says, I'm not staying here unless I have a long-term deal. That could be the straw that broke the camel's back. The Patriots coaches are mummed to who's calling the plays. Who's going to be the offensive and defensive coordinators. Right now, the leaders are Joe Judge and Matt Patricia. And I found this was very interesting because they're both former assistants of the Patriots. Now, this could be totally faked, as in, we assume they are, but we don't know. Maybe the Belichick brothers are doing this. Maybe they are. Maybe the whole family of Belichick is calling the plays. I don't know. But as of right now, there's nothing coming out of New England about who is the offense and defensive coordinators. Philip Lindsay signs a one-year deal with the Colts. I mean, okay, you're not going to be a starter, so I guess. Tariq Cohen, former Bears running back, tears his Achilles doing an Instagram workout, just trying to show people he still has it, because sometimes teams forget about you, especially if you're hurt. Teams forget a little bit, so you want to showcase what you do. It's a shame that he got hurt doing an Instagram workout where he was trying to show he was in good shape. I hope his former team, the Bears, do take care of it somewhat. Maybe not pay it entirely, but pay at least half, so he doesn't have to go through this all on his own. And he could hopefully rehab with the Bears. Hopefully. James Bradbury signed with the Eagles on a one-year deal worth $10 million. And everyone's trying to still say the Eagles made the right decision here. And I'm not saying they didn't. They did. They've had a great offseason. But the fact that you're saying that the Eagles have now, because I even heard a report that said the Eagles lapped the Cowboys and will lap how many wins they had this year. I even heard that. And I was like, this division's weird. It's weird. One year, all these teams are really good, and the next year, all these teams are really bad. Or maybe you have one good team that ends up finishing the year 10-7. I mean, it's really nothing, to be honest with you. You don't know. You can't lose the division in May. We'll just have to see what happens during the NFL season and which teams look good and which teams don't look right at this point. As we talked about, Daxton Hill, he was in the Cincinnati Bengals. He signed with the Bengals on his rookie contract, so nothing to imagine over there. And finally, the Ravens punter Sam Cook retires after 16 years at age 39. He's joining the Ravens staff as a consultant. But, yeah, it's okay. You know, they drafted a punter, so there's no concern. But that was the final NFL news. Some legendary news is Bud Grant turned 95 on this past Friday, so congratulations to Bud Grant. 95 is a tremendous milestone, and maybe he can get to 96. We'll see. But this is a tough man. A few years ago, when he was 88, he walked outside in Minnesota with short sleeves. Maybe he can make it to 96.